Hello guys, I am back with another episode. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and the message reads like this. Hello brother, how are you? So recently I came across your channel. I've been looking for a very long time for someone to share with my story. Right now, me and my siblings, we are residing here in USA. We are a family from Kenya, and we are seeking for a solution. If there is anyone who can assist us in the comment section, we are facing a big problem. But all of these problems, they started soon after the death of our father. I thought that when we had moved here to USA, all of these things, we had left them behind in Kenya. But it seems as if these things even followed us here to America. My story goes like this. I am the firstborn in my family, and I have a brother and a sister. We are 3 in our family. All of us, we are staying here in America. We were born and raised in the capital city of Kenya with our parents. My father was a well-respected man, and we come from a Christian family. Actually, my parents were advisors at our local church. And we come from a family, we cannot say we were very rich, but my parents were people who were owning a lot of houses. Even today, the company that was left behind by my father, it is still there. My father was someone who was into real estate, but later on, my father had a very small gas company. He was filling up gas bottles from one of his properties, but from that small gas company, my father was making a lot of money. As someone who did accounting in her university years, I could not even understand the cash flow that was coming out of that company. It was a lot of money, as if my father was the only one who was in the business of filling up gas bottles. On some days, I'll sit down, then I would look at the books. The figures did not add up, because when I would look at the bottom of the page and see the total figure for the sales on that day, I'll see that the figures did not match the customers that would have come at his company to refill their gas bottles. Sometimes only 4 people would have come to refill their gas bottles, but when you look at the daily sales, it was even 10 times more than the sales that would have been recorded into the book. This thing always troubled me, but I never asked my father, because my father was someone who was always angry most of the times. And when my father passed away, I then understood that the reason why my father was always angry, he didn't want us to ask him a lot of questions. At our house, there were a lot of rules. There were days when we were told to switch off the lights. Sometimes it would be around 8 p.m. Then my father would walk around the house, making sure that everyone would have switched off their lights. We were not supposed to light our candles. A phone you could use, but most of the times he will tell you that do not light the candle or anything. But why he was doing all of these things, we could not understand. But on many nights, when he will say switch off the lights, then within a couple of minutes, we will hear that on top of the roof, it will be as if someone will be running on top of the roof. Sometimes you could hear that on top of the roof, it seemed as if there were 2 people that were chasing each other. This thing could only happen for 2 to 5 minutes, then everything will stop. Then my father will switch on the lights, and he always switched on the kitchen light first before he switched all the lights in the house. And he made sure that he would go into each and every room, then switch on the lights. We were so afraid of our father, because our father was someone who was always angry. I never saw my father beating up my mother or doing anything, but if he wanted to shout, everyone in the house will remain quiet. And growing up, the other thing that I noticed about my father, he was someone who hated church. He really loved to visit traditional healers. But now I know that my father really had skeletons in his closets. After the death of my father, that is when we learned that my father did a ritual that was responsible for the death of my grandparents. My father sacrificed his mother first then he sacrificed his father afterwards. All of this, he did it for the sake of money. After my father fell ill for 3 years, he went to Singapore to get the best medication, but there was no help that was coming his way. I still remember that on this other day, my father traveled with his sister and with our mother. They went to Cuba. They stayed there, I think, for about 2 months, but they came back. My father was so ill. Whenever they would go to a different hospital, the doctors will tell my father that he has cancer. But whenever he would go to another hospital, the doctors there would give him a completely different diagnostics. When my father was ill, we were always confused. At that time, in the second year, when my father was ill, that is when me and my siblings migrated to America. Then on the third year, before we could travel back to Kenya, that is when we heard that our father had sadly passed away. Me and my siblings, we then traveled back to Kenya. And when we arrived there was just confusion at his funeral. And I believe that it was because of all the bad spirits that my father had been using. There was just confusion. What happened is that when we were supposed to go and fetch our father's body at the mortuary, we got lost. Even up until this day, me and my siblings, we ask ourselves a lot of questions. There are days when we are just sitting, then we ask ourselves, but there are things that you can confuse. But how can you confuse the name of a hospital? Because when we went as a family to collect the body of my father, we got lost and we went to look for our father's body in another hospital, a completely different hospital. And after we had traveled back to that hospital where our father's body was lying in the mortuary, it was already late. Then we were told that we had to collect that body the following morning. So we returned back home without our father's body. Everyone at my father's funeral was just shocked about that incident. And at the church where we attend, there were some contributions that were done. People were contributing their money, but after the contributions were done, when people had finished counting the money, I still remember that my mother then sent my sister to go and hide the money, because at my father's funeral, there were a lot of people, especially from our local area. So my sister went and she hid the money in a place where no one could ever get the money, because I even didn't know the password to that safe where she had gone to hide the money. It was only my sister and my mother who knew the password, and my father. My sister also, she didn't knew the password until that day when my mother gave her the password so that she can go and hide the money. She went there and she hid the money. But on the day that my mom opened up the safe, this was after the burial of my father, then we found out that there was nothing inside the safe. The money had disappeared. Even the book that contained the names of all the people who had donated their money at church, that book was also missing. The only thing that was inside that small safe, it was just a pen. The money and the book had just vanished. Now it has been many years that has gone by, but the problems started with my mom. One day my mom called me, then she was panicking and she was crying. I asked her, "What is going on, mom?" Then she said that I woke up, then in another bank account there was no money. Money had just vanished in her other savings account. Lucky enough, it was not a lot of money. Then the cars that my father had left behind, they kept on breaking down. So we spoke with our mother. Then we told her that since they are old cars, it is high time that we purchase a new car for you here in America. Then we'll export it back to Kenya. So we did that. But the car that we bought here in America, after we had exported it to Kenya, the very first day that it arrived at our house, that is when one of my mother's brother called us. Then he said that the car that you sent to us, it looks like it has a big problem, because we just called a mechanic. He has tried to fix the car, but it is not even starting. Do you think that you bought a car that is faulty? because even the dashboard cannot switch on. My brother, I was heartbroken because this was a new car and we had tried to work very hard for this car. That car, my brother, it is just sitting in the garage. These are the things that are happening to us. If these things were only happening back home, we will say that at least me and my siblings, we are safe. But it looks like these things are following us. Recently, I've been speaking with my sister because now she is staying with her boyfriend in another state. She said that one day she was sleeping in bed. Her husband had gone out to work. His husband was working night shift. Then when she opened her eyes, she saw that in her room there was someone who was standing in the corner. But when she opened her eyes, that man that was standing in the corner ran out of the room. But that man ran out of her room through the window, even though the windows were closed and they had burglar bars. And it seemed as if the man managed to run through the window. That was the first time. The next thing that happened when her husband was at work, she said that the next time when she woke up, she was feeling really cold. So she woke up to see what was going on. She thought that maybe the air condition was bad or something, but when she woke up, to her surprise, she saw that the air condition seemed to be working properly. Even the temperature that she had adjusted before she had slept, it was still okay. But the scariest thing that she told me is that when she woke up, someone had removed the blankets that was on her bed, and that person had folded all of the blankets, even the pillows, they were placed neatly on the floor. My little sister, when she woke up, she was just sleeping on the mattress without any sheets or what. Dear brother, this thing that happened to my sister really scared the hell out of me. I don't know if these things will come after me. I don't know what I will do if all of these spiritual attacks were to happen to me. Hey, dear listeners, right there was a message that I received from Anonymous. Strange things do happen in this world. Please let us talk about this issue in the comment section.